The Galactic Assembly was supposed to be a symbol of unity, wisdom, and progress, a place where the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy gathered to guide the future. For centuries, humanity looked up at the stars believing that one day, they too would stand among those ancient powers. That day had finally come. The Terran Union delegation had spent months preparing for the journey. The finest minds, the strongest leaders, and the most skilled diplomats were chosen for one mission: earn humanity a rightful seat at the Assembly. Their flagship, the Aurora Ascendant, glided through the shimmering corridor of folded space, carrying with it the dreams of an entire species. Among the delegation stood Commander Kale Draven, a tall, broad-shouldered officer whose reputation for unbreakable resolve preceded him. He was not only a veteran of frontier defense campaigns but also a symbol of unity among Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. His presence represented humanity's strength. At his side walked diplomat Lyra Solon, known across human space as the Silver Tongue of Sol. Calm, sharp-minded, and fiercely compassionate, she was chosen for her unmatched ability to bridge cultures. She believed deeply in cooperation, perhaps more than anyone else in the Terran Union. They had trained for every scenario. They had memorized protocols. They had prepared answers for every question the Assembly might ask. But nothing prepared them for the sight that awaited them once they stepped into the Assembly Hall. The Assembly Hall was a colossal chamber shaped like a star blooming open. Thousands of floating platforms ringed the center, each belonging to a different species. Elegant holographic banners shimmered above them, showing the sigils of civilizations tens of thousands of years old. This was the beating heart of galactic power. Yet, as the human delegation entered, the room fell into a hush. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Eyes, some bright, some shadowed, some glowing like embers, turned toward the newcomers. Whispers spread like ripples in a pond. Those are the humans? The newcomers from the frontier spiral? I expected more. They expand too fast. Too violent. Too unpredictable. Kale heard every whisper. So did Lyra. But neither responded. They walked with heads high, their boots echoing across the luminous floor. If the galaxy expected fear, they would see pride instead. At the center of the chamber hovered Archon Varellus, a towering figure of the Valori Dominion, one of the founding races of the Assembly. His crystalline armor shimmered as if carved from starlight, and his voice resonated through the hall without a single speaker. Delegation of the Terran Union, the Archon declared, step forward. Humanity took its place below the central dais. Kale stood firm. Lyra bowed respectfully. Silence descended. For the first time, Varellus continued, humanity seeks a seat at this most sacred council. Present your case. Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with conviction. Honored Assembly, we are grateful for the chance to speak before you. Humanity comes not seeking dominance nor privilege but partnership. We offer technology, cooperation, and our pledge to uphold the peace that this Assembly has protected for millennia. We believe that unity with the wider galaxy is the path forward for all. Several of the delegates exchanged glances. A few nodded in approval. But others scowled, if their species had faces that could scowl. Lyra continued, describing humanity's achievements, their rapid colonization efforts, their peaceful treaties, their advancements in medicine and energy. She spoke of potential. She spoke of hope. When she finished, the hall was silent. For a moment, there was a glimmer of possibility. Then Archon Varellus spoke again. Your words are passionate. Your progress is undeniable. Yet passion does not equal wisdom. Progress does not equal maturity. Humanity is young. Kale felt his jaw tighten. Lyra kept her composure. Varellus raised a translucent hand. The Assembly has reviewed your history, your wars, your conflict, your tendency toward rapid, uncontrolled expansion. You are unpredictable. You are driven by ambition, not stability. A murmur of agreement spread through the hall. Kale's eyes narrowed. He could feel the decision forming before the words were spoken. We believe humanity is not ready for a seat among the elder powers, Varellus said. You require guidance, restraint, and time. Therefore, he paused dramatically. The Terran Union is denied a seat at the Galactic Assembly. The hall echoed with the verdict. Denied. The word hit harder than any weapon. Denied. The delegation froze. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Kale's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. Varellus continued coldly, perhaps in several centuries, when your species has learned obedience and discipline, the Assembly may reconsider. A few delegates laughed, softly but cruelly. Others simply turned away, dismissing humanity as if they were nothing more than children. Lyra stepped forward, her voice shaking slightly, not with fear but with anger held tightly under control. "With respect, Archon," she said, "we came here in peace. We came seeking unity. Humanity has worked tirelessly to prove its worth. And we have judged you," Varellus interrupted sharply. "This is final." Kale took one step forward, meeting the Archon's crystalline gaze. "You judge us based on your fears," he said. "Not facts." Several delegates stirred, shocked that a human dared speak so boldly. Varellus tilted his head. "We judge you based on what you are. And what you may become." Kale replied softly, "Then you've made a mistake." For the first time the Archon looked uncertain. "Explain yourself." Kale's voice was calm, but beneath it ran a steel the galaxy had yet to understand. "You think denying us will keep humanity in place," he said. "That it will slow us down. That it will humble us." He shook his head. "But this insult will do the opposite. You have united us, not in weakness but in resolve." Lyra placed a hand on his arm, urging caution. Kale stepped back but did not break eye contact. Varellus dismissed them with a wave of his crystalline hand. "Humans, return to your world. Learn your limits." But as the human delegation walked out of the assembly hall, heads turning away from them in disdain, something had changed, not just in Kale, not just in Lyra, but in every human watching from ships and colonies across the Terran Union. The galaxy had slammed a door in humanity's face. Humanity would build a new one. And one day, the assembly would wish they had opened it. Humanity's return journey from the Galactic Assembly was silent. The Aurora Ascendant drifted through the folded space lanes like a wounded beast retreating home. Its polished chrome hull reflected the distorted starlight around it, but inside the ship, pride had been cracked, if not shattered. Commander Kale Draven stood at the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back as he watched the cosmic corridor warp into streaks of white and indigo. Normally he found beauty in these routes, tunnels carved by physics-bending engines, but today the sight felt hollow. Footsteps approached behind him. It was diplomat Lyra Solon. "You did well," she said softly. Kale didn't turn. "We were humiliated." Lyra stepped beside him, her reflection faint in the glass. "They feared us. Fear makes people irrational. Sometimes cruel." Kale exhaled, the tension in his shoulders barely easing. "They could have welcomed us. Could have guided us. Instead they insulted an entire species." Lyra didn't argue. She had no reason to. The truth was carved into the assembly's verdict. Kale finally turned to her. "What happens now?" Lyra gave a weak smile. "That's the question every human is asking." She was right. Across the Terran Union, billions watched the live transmission of the assembly's rejection. The moment the verdict had been broadcast, uproar tore through the United Colonies. On Earth, crowds filled the megaplazas, protesting both the humiliation and the injustice. On Mars, the academies lit up with debates, some calling for diplomacy, others shouting for independence. In the outer colonies, tough worlds forged by survival, anger burned the hottest. Humanity had been denied, not out weakness, but because they grew too fast, too fiercely, too unpredictably for the ancient power's comfort. By the time the Aurora Ascendant reached human space, the Terran Union Council was already in emergency session. Kale and Lyra were summoned immediately. The council chamber was a circular room floating above Earth in orbit, a transparent dome giving a full view of the blue planet below. 12 high-ranking leaders from across the Terran world sat around a holographic table, the symbol of a rising star spinning in its center. High Chancellor Vera Kalin, an older woman with silver braid and stern eyes, addressed them. "You have returned at a difficult time," she said. "The entire Union is watching this council. Our response will shape the future." Lyra bowed respectfully. "High Chancellor, humanity sought peace and cooperation. We offered resources and alliances. Instead we were told we were unworthy." "They told us to learn obedience," Kale interjected. "They want us on our knees." A rumble of agreement spread through the chamber. Councillor Reese Cato of the Jovian colonies tapped the table. "This rejection cannot go unanswered. Not with silence." Councillor Amara Lintau, representing Earth's pacifist bloc, frowned. "We must not rush toward conflict. The Assembly is powerful. They could crush us if provoked." Kale stepped forward, voice steady but fierce. "They have already provoked us. They erased one of our colonies, Arden's Reach. That was no accident." Silence fell. The information had been classified, but Kale had no interest in politics anymore. Humanity needed truth. Amara's face went pale. Are you certain? Kale nodded. The evidence left behind was a message. A threat. Counselor Cato slammed his fist. Then the assembly is not just arrogant, they're dangerous. Lyra raised a hand. I am not advocating war. But I am saying we cannot continue pretending we are children needing supervision. We are equals. We must act like equals. High Chancellor Vera studied both Kale and Lyra closely. Commander Draven, she said, in your estimation, should humanity try to negotiate further? Or forge its own path? Kale spoke without hesitation. Negotiation requires respect. They have shown none. It's time humanity decides its own destiny, without begging for permission. Lyra nodded slowly. We sought a seat at their table. They denied it. So perhaps, we build our own table. The council chamber erupted into debate. Some argued for diplomacy. Others demanded retaliation. But more voices than ever spoke of unity, of forging a path separate from the assembly's shadow. Finally, High Chancellor Vera raised her hand, silencing the room. The Terran Union now faces two choices, she announced. We can bow or we can rise. Her gaze swept the chamber. Let us vote. A sphere of light appeared over the table, displaying two paths. 1. Submit to the assembly and continue seeking approval. 2. Reject their authority and become sovereign, building alliances of our own. The council members placed their votes silently. One by one the symbols lit up. Reject. 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 Only 2 chose to continue negotiations. 10 chose sovereignty. The decision was clear. Humanity would bow no more. The High Chancellor rose to her feet. Then let the galaxy bear witness, she declared. From this day forward, the Terran Union becomes the Terran sovereignty, a free, united empire of humanity and its colonies. Kale felt something heavy lift from his chest. The humiliation of the assembly was gone, replaced by newfound purpose. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes, not of sorrow but relief. This was the moment humanity reclaimed its voice. High Chancellor Vera continued, Commander Kale Draven, step forward. Kale obeyed, standing tall. You are hereby appointed Supreme Strategos of the Sovereignty's Defense Forces. Protect our people. Prepare them for whatever the galaxy may bring. Kale bowed his head. I will serve with everything I am. Lyra Solon, the Chancellor said, your voice represents the heart of humanity. You are appointed High Envoy of the Sovereignty. Seek allies among those the Assembly has cast aside. Lyra placed her hand over her chest. I accept. Vera looked around the room. The galaxy thinks us children. Let us show them what children can grow into. Later, after the council session had ended, Kale and Lyra stood together on an observation deck, looking down at Earth. Do you think we made the right choice? Lyra asked quietly. Kale's gaze was firm. They denied us a seat, he said. So we will build something greater than their entire assembly. Lyra smiled at that. A small, bright smile full of hope. And when they come knocking? Kale looked into the stars, eyes reflecting the endless frontier. Then we'll decide whether to open the door. Humanity had been denied its place. So humanity would create its own destiny. And the galaxy would never be the same. The formation of the Terran sovereignty spread across human space like a shockwave of fire and purpose. For the first time since humanity left Earth's cradle, billions of people, across worlds, moons, stations and deep space habitats, stood united under a single banner. And unity brought ambition. The galaxy had told humanity no. Humanity responded by building something far stronger than a simple yes. Supreme Strategos Kale Draven stood inside the Sovereignty's newly constructed command citadel on Titanum Prime. The citadel, a towering structure of matte steel and shimmering energy barriers, overlooked a vast world of factories, shipyards and training fields. Once a barren, airless rock, Titanum Prime had now become the heart of human military engineering. Kale turned to his operations chief, an older man named Hale Vorn, whose cybernetic eye flickered with tactical readouts. How many shipyards are online? Kale asked. 17 hyperforge complexes fully operational, Vorn replied. The rest will be active within the year. Kale's gaze hardened. And ship output? Vorn allowed himself a small, proud smile. We're producing a dreadnought every 90 days. Battlecruisers every 40. Escorts weekly. Kale nodded, though deep inside he felt a swell of something rarely associated with him, satisfaction. For centuries, humanity's expansion had been cautious. Slow. Careful not to disturb the galaxy's established powers. But now caution had burned away, replaced by pure, focused momentum. The Terran Sovereignty's navy grew so fast that even the most advanced species in the assembly whispered nervously. The galaxy was witnessing the birth of a military giant, and it was only the beginning. Across human space, innovation flourished at a pace that startled even humanity's brightest minds. On Mars, researchers completed the quantum rail network, a revolutionary set of transit lines that allowed fleets to jump between human sectors nearly instantly. The assembly relied on slower slipstream corridors and predictable lanes. Humanity had created something unpredictable. Kale visited the Mars Quantum Nexus personally, accompanied by the brilliant engineer Tessa Corvin, the architect of the system. "This changes everything," she said, her voice trembling with excitement as she guided Kale through a room of spiraling energy projectors. Kale examined the pulsing rail conduits. "This means our fleet can be anywhere in minutes." Tessa nodded vigorously. "A strike can originate from nowhere. A defense can mobilize instantly. The assembly won't be able to anticipate our movements." Kale looked at her and said one word that carried the weight of humanity's new destiny. "Good." Meanwhile, Lyra Solon embarked on her mission as High Envoy. With the sovereignty no longer bound by the Assembly's restrictions, she traveled deep into forgotten regions of the galaxy, places where the Assembly's influence had dwindled or never reached. She met with the Valari Prism Shields, a graceful species capable of manipulating photonic energy. She traveled underground with the Drathan Stoneborn, a proud civilization ignored and belittled by the Assembly for centuries. She visited the floating jungles of the Serenai biokind, experts in biotechnology so advanced it bordered on magic. All of them shared one thing in common. They had been denied, marginalized, dismissed, just as humanity had. Lyra negotiated treaties, forged alliances, and extended the hand of cooperation, not from desperation but from strength. During one meeting, the Valari emissary El Thura asked her, "Why do you humans seek the rejected? Why not pursue the powerful assembly races?" Lyra answered softly with pride in her voice, "Because we know what it means to be underestimated. And because the future belongs not to those who sit on thrones, but to those who build new ones." The emissary bowed. The alliance was sealed. Word of humanity's growing coalition spread across the galaxy, both inspiring and terrifying. Back on Titanum Prime, Kale observed the construction of the most ambitious military project humanity had ever attempted, the Titanum Line. It was a network of colossal defense bastions orbiting key sovereignty systems, each equipped with graviton disruptors, planetary shields, fleet-grade railguns, counter-AI interception grids, and star-core reactors capable of powering entire colonies. These megastructures were so advanced that they rivaled even the ancient defensive rings of the elder races. Kale stood on the observation deck with Vorn, watching drones assemble a shield lattice the size of a continent. Vorn whistled softly. "The Assembly believed denying us would slow our development." "They miscalculated," Kale replied. "They always do." Kale didn't smile often, but a faint smirk touched his lips. The galaxy was starting to talk. On the homeworld of the Avari High Council, frightened nobles whispered about human aggression. On the cold moons of the Kreth Syndicate, pirate lords considered preemptive strikes, but hesitated, fearing swift retaliation. Even the mighty Valori Dominion sent spies to gather intel, only to find their agents countered by the sovereignty's fast-growing intelligence network. Humanity was changing and the galaxy was struggling to keep up. And the Assembly's fear began to twist into something uglier. One evening, as Kale reviewed fleet expansion data, Lyra appeared on his holoscreen, her expression grave. "Kale, we need to talk." He straightened. "What happened?" "My scouts intercepted encrypted Assembly transmissions. Delegates are urging something called a containment directive." Kale's jaw tightened. "Meaning?" "Meaning they want to limit our growth. Cut off our trade. Block our expansion. Maybe even intervene militarily." Kale inhaled slowly, the weight of the revelation settling across his shoulders. "So it begins." "They're afraid," Lyra said quietly. "They should be." For a moment, neither spoke. Finally Kale said, "Keep gathering allies. We need strength, not just ours but every species they've stepped on." Lyra nodded. "I already am." The transmission ended. Kale stood alone in his office, overlooking Titanum Prime's blazing industrial landscape. Sparks from shipyard forges arced across the sky like falling stars. The galaxy wanted to contain humanity, restrain humanity, control humanity. It was far too late for that. Humanity had risen, faster, harder, and stronger than the Assembly ever predicted. And the Iron Frontier was only the beginning. Humanity wasn't preparing for war. Humanity was preparing for destiny. For a brief moment, the galaxy watched humanity's rise with a mixture of awe and disbelief. But awe soon curdled into fear. And fear into conspiracy. Unchecked ambition, the Assembly whispered. A threat to stability, the Dominion warned. A danger to the old order, the Syndicate snarled. Humanity was no longer merely a rising power. It was an anomaly, fast, clever, unpredictable, and in the eyes of the ancient species, uncontrollable. And when something cannot be controlled, history shows that someone always tries to destroy it. Supreme Strategos Kale Draven sat in the dim situation chamber aboard the ISV Valorian, the Sovereignty's newest flagship. Built in secret within Titanium Prime's hidden hyperforged docks, the Valorian was a leviathan of steel and light, its hull coated in neutron-infused plating, its rail cannons the size of small buildings. This ship was made for one purpose: deterrence. But deterrence only worked when the enemy feared consequences. And the galaxy was growing bold. As Kale studied intelligence reports, a door slid open. Tactician Hale Vorn entered with a data slate clutched tightly in his hand. "We've intercepted additional transmissions from the Assembly," Vorn said. Kale didn't look up. "More containment plans?" "Worse." Vorn placed the slate on the table. "They're discussing covert operations. Sabotage. Proxy attacks. Even targeted destabilization." Kale's eyes narrowed. "They don't have the courage for open war." Vorn frowned. "Desperate empires don't use courage. They use shadows." Kale leaned back in his chair, the screens around him flickering with strategic maps. "What's their first move?" Vorn hesitated. "We're not sure. But our analysts believe they've already begun." Kale stood. "Explain." The tactician swallowed hard. "One of our frontier colonies hasn't responded in 3 days." Kale's expression darkened. "Which one?" "Arden's Reach." Arden's Reach was a small but thriving colony located at the edge of sovereignty space. It housed 50,000 civilians, farmers, researchers, families, and served as a beacon of humanity's hope for peaceful expansion. To Kale it was personal. He had once overseen its establishment. He remembered the first settlers, the optimism, the celebrations when the atmospheric processors first generated breathable air. Kale's voice dropped to a low, cold tone. "Summon a strike group. We leave immediately." The journey through the frontier spiral was quiet, too quiet. When the ISV Valorian and its escort ships dropped out of the quantum rail onto Arden's Reach, Kale expected distress signals, emergency beacons, or at least traffic patterns. Instead he found nothing. No lights. No space traffic. No colony chatter on comms. Just a dead, frozen silence. "Scan the surface," Kale ordered. Vorn tapped commands quickly. After a moment his face paled. "Strategos, there are no energy signatures. No comm signals. No biosigns." Kale's chest tightened. "Check again." "I did," Vorn whispered. "There's no one alive down there." Kale turned sharply. "Prepare a landing party." The shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere of Arden's Reach. Clouds rolled over barren plains once bright with growing fields. The settlement below was intact, not destroyed, not burned, not cratered, just empty. Completely empty. Kale stepped onto the ground, boots sinking into dust. Buildings stood untouched, doors ajar, lights dead. Cups sat half full on tables. Tools were dropped mid-work. Everything looked as if the colony had stopped living in a single moment. Lyra Salin, who had insisted on joining the investigation, stood beside him. Her voice trembled. "Kale, where are the people?" Kale didn't respond. His eyes scanned the horizon until something caught his attention. A mark on the ground. A symbol, burned deeply into the soil using high-energy plasma. The shape was unmistakable. The sigil of the Galactic Assembly, stylized and cruel, with the words beneath it written in old Valori script. Kale crouched and traced the edges of the burn. "Know your place," he translated. Lyra's breath caught. So it was them. Kale stood slowly, fists trembling with restrained fury. They didn't even bother hiding it. Lyra turned in a slow circle, taking in the silent city. How could they do this? These were civilians. Families. Children. Kale's jaw clenched so tightly the muscles strained. They want to break us. They think a message like this will force us back into submission. Lyra's eyes glistened with grief. "Do you believe any survived?" Kale shook his head. "Not by the looks of it. They weren't killed. They were taken." Lyra swallowed. "Taken? For what?" Kale's voice lowered. Leverage, perhaps. Or to study us. Or simply to punish us. He looked into the distance, fury burning like a sun behind his eyes. But whatever their reason, this was a declaration. Lyra exhaled shakily. Then what do we do? Kale stared at the assembly's burned symbol beneath his boots. Exactly what they fear, he said. We unite. We grow stronger. And we prepare. He turned toward the shuttle. No more restraint. No more pretending diplomacy alone will save us. Lyra placed a hand on his arm gently. Kale, they will come after us harder now. I know. Kale's voice was steel. Let them. He looked up at the sky where the Valorian waited. If they strike from shadows, then we will shine so brightly the shadows will cease to exist. The investigation lasted hours, but no survivors were found. Before leaving, Kale ordered something rare and symbolic. Raise the colony's banner, he said. This world may be empty, but it is still ours. When the flag of the Terran sovereignty unfurled in the cold wind, it marked not only remembrance, but defiance. Humanity was done being polite. Done playing by the Assembly's rules. Done waiting for permission to exist. Arden's reach became the spark. The moment that shifted humanity from passive determination to active readiness. Enemies hid in the shadows. But shadows could only exist where there was no fire. Humanity was building a fire that would burn across the stars. And in the coming storm, the galaxy would finally learn what humanity was capable of. The news of Arden's reach spread like wildfire. Within hours, every member of the High Council stood in the Grand Assembly Hall, their faces pale with a blend of outrage and disbelief. Holographic feeds flickered with satellite images of the abandoned colony, still intact, still quiet, still haunting. Some wept. Some trembled. Some demanded retribution. But Kale Draven simply watched them. When the chamber finally fell silent, he stepped forward. His presence alone was enough to command the room, tall, focused, with a fury wrapped tightly under a layer of iron discipline. The enemy believes this will break us, he said. His voice echoed against the vaulted obsidian ceiling. They believe fear will push humanity back into the shadows of history. He paused. They are wrong. A ripple moved through the council. Some leaned in, others braced themselves. Kale continued. For years we sought harmony. We sought cooperation. We offered our hand to the galaxy. He raised his voice. But the Galactic Assembly has responded with threats, sabotage, and now a kidnapping of 50,000 innocent lives. He pointed at the frozen hologram of the Assembly's scorched symbol on Arden's reach. This is not diplomacy. This is not caution. This is domination. He turned to the council, eyes burning with conviction. And I will not let humanity be dominated. A thrum of approval rippled across the room. The youngest counselor, Arik Renlo, stood abruptly. Strategos Draven, what do you propose? Kale inhaled deeply. This moment had been building for too long. It is time, he said, for the Terran sovereignty to evolve. No longer a fragile coalition. No longer an experimental government born from desperation. He stepped forward. It is time for an empire of resolve. A collective gasp swept the hall. Counselor Marianne Solis rose, her elegant robes shimmering with embedded circuitry. An empire? You are suggesting we abandon democracy? Kale shook his head. Not abandon it, reinforce it. Strengthen it. Elevate it. A structure capable of defending our people, our worlds, our future. Marianne's voice lowered. And who would lead such an empire? Kale exhaled slowly. Not a single ruler. Not a tyrant. But an emperor council, half elected, half appointed by merit. A hybrid system designed to unite our military, political, and scientific power under one purpose. Vorn stepped beside him. Unity is our greatest weapon. And the Assembly fears nothing more, Kale added. The hall stirred again, fear, hope, and uncertainty mixing in equal measure. High Chancellor Naira Valen asked softly, and what purpose would define this empire? Kale's answer was immediate. To protect humanity. To ensure that what happened on Arden's Reach never happens again. To face the galaxy not as fractured factions but as one voice. He looked around the chamber. One unbreakable will. The debate lasted 7 hours. Some argued fiercely against centralization. Others insisted that humanity's enemies had already chosen a path of escalation, leaving no alternative. And through it all, Kale remained unmoving, present but silent, letting the council wrestle with its own fears. By the time dawn's light filtered through the crystalline skylight, The decision was unanimous. Humanity would transform. The Terran sovereignty would become the Imperium of Sol. And Kale Draven would become its first Imperial Strategos, the guardian of the Empire's security, its fleets and its future. Not a king. Not a dictator. But the shield humanity desperately needed. 3 days later, Kale stood aboard the ISV Valorian's command deck as dozens of ships drifted into formation. Old frigates retrofitted for the new era. Brand new cruisers rolled out of Titanium's hyperforge. Even merchant vessels repurposed for militia duty. A fleet being reborn. Lyra Solon approached him quietly. You changed everything. Kale didn't look away from the stars. Humanity changed. I simply recognized it. She studied him for a moment. The Empire is already shaping itself around you. Kale exhaled slowly. That isn't what I wanted. No, she said. It's what they needed. He turned. And what do you think? Her eyes softened. I think you're carrying a weight no one else could bear. Kale gave a faint, tired smile. Sometimes I wonder if this path leads to salvation, or to ruin. Lyra stepped closer. That's the burden of every leader who refuses to bow. Before Kale could respond, a comm officer called out from across the deck. Strategos. Priority transmission from Titanium Prime. Kale straightened. Put it through. A hologram flickered to life. Admiral Joran Vale, commander of Imperial Intelligence. Strategos, Vale said sharply. We've intercepted a coded assembly transmission. Kale felt his heartbeat shift. From where? From deep space. Unknown sector. We decrypted part of it. And? Vale's expression darkened. They're moving the abducted colonists. Kale's muscles tensed. Where? We don't know yet. But there's more. Vale activated a data feed. Symbols and coordinates flashed. Then a line of text. Kale's eyes narrowed. That's Valori script. Lyra leaned in. What does it mean? He translated quietly. Initiate Project Eclipse. Vorn, who had overheard, frowned. What is Project Eclipse? Vale responded grimly. A plan the Assembly swore never existed. A preemptive strike doctrine designed to cripple a rising civilization before it becomes too strong. Lyra's breath caught. They're planning to destroy us? Kale didn't move. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried a fury that could ignite stars. So be it, he said. If they want an eclipse. He turned toward the fleet, eyes sharp as blades. Then we'll show them the dawn. The alarms echoed across the Valorian as Kale issued his final command of the night. All fleets, prepare for mobilization. The Imperium of Sol moves at first light. The galaxy wanted to erase humanity. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had united it first. The ISV Valorian drifted through the silent darkness of space, its engines dimmed to whisper mode. The entire fleet followed behind it, 67 vessels stretching like a trail of steel constellations. The air on the bridge hummed with anticipation, tension, and a cold determination that ran like current through every officer present. Kale Draven stood at the command lectern, staring at the newly decrypted star map. Thousands of glowing dots filled the hologram, but his attention locked on a single pulsing coordinate, marked in violent red. Sector X-49. Uncharted. Unregistered. Unwelcome. Why hide them here? Lyra Solon murmured, arms folded, eyes narrowed as she studied the data. There's nothing but radiation fields and dead star remnants. No trade routes, no bases, nothing. Vorn Aerith tapped the edge of the hologram. Because no one would think to look. It's a graveyard. Kale didn't move. Not a graveyard. He zoomed the map. New icons appeared, energy signatures, faint but unmistakable. A cage. A hush fell across the deck. Hours later, the fleet emerged from warp at the edge of Sector X-49. The stars here were dimmer, swallowed by swirls of cosmic dust and drifting metallic debris. Even the ship's sensors trembled as they scanned the dark expanse. The first anomalies appeared quickly. Strategos, the comm officer reported, we're picking up unusual interference. Looks artificial. Kale's jaw tightened. Source. Everywhere. Static crawled across the main screen. Then the interference parted just enough for the image to sharpen. And the fleet saw it. A massive ring-shaped structure suspended between two collapsed stars, spanning nearly 50 kilometers in diameter. Its surface was carved with alien glyphs, glowing faintly like embers beneath ash. Lyra exhaled. What in the stars? Vorn whispered, that's not assembly design. Kale stepped forward. No. It's older. The ring rotated slowly, drawing energy from the gravitational turbulence around it. Inside its hollow center was a cluster of smaller habitats, suspended by anti-grav pylons. Human habitats. Human lights. Human life. The 50,000 abducted colonists, inside a prison of ancient architecture. Kale's voice lowered to a dangerously controlled tone. Begin magnification. The image zoomed in, revealing human faces behind reinforced windows, scared, exhausted but alive. Children clung to parents. Elders huddled together. Some pressed their hands against the glass as if hoping someone somewhere could see them. Lyra covered her mouth. They can see us. Kale's eyes hardened. They need to know we haven't forgotten them. But before he could speak further, multiple warp signatures incoming, the tactical officer shouted. Enemy fleet approaching fast. Dozens of crimson markers blinked onto the hollow map. Then more. And more. 100 ships. 200. 300. An entire assembly armada materialized like a storm. The ring prison lit up with defensive generators. The void vibrated with the rumble of activation sequences. Kale didn't flinch. All hands, he said calmly. Battle stations. The assembly fleet spread across the sector like a net closing around prey. Their ships were sleek, metallic, and arranged with almost ritualistic precision. The central vessel, a monstrous dreadnought shaped like an angular spear, broadcast a single message across all frequencies. Terran vessels, you have entered a restricted sovereign zone. Withdraw immediately. Kale answered with a message of his own, steady as stone. Release our people. There was a pause. Then the assembly replied. Humanity is a destabilizing force. Their removal serves the balance of the galaxy. Vorn snarled. They're calling people instability? Kale muted the channel. They aren't here to negotiate. Lyra's fingers hovered over her console. Strategos, what's the plan? Kale tilted his head, studying the ring structure. We can't fire on the prison. And we can't let the assembly reinforce it. His eyes locked onto the spatial distortions surrounding the ring. Interwoven energy filaments pulsed like a heartbeat. That structure is drawing power from the gravitational well. If we sever the conduits... Lyra finished the thought. It'll shut down. The habitats will power up backup systems. Vorn's eyes widened. Then we can breach and extract the colonists. Exactly. But what about the assembly fleet? Lyra asked. Kale turned toward the forward screens, watching as hundreds of enemy ships began to position for a full-scale assault. He exhaled. That's why we brought an empire. The first shots came from the assembly side, lances of searing blue energy streaking across the void. The Valorian rolled aside, its shields flaring with purple light. Kale's voice rang across the fleet-wide channel. Imperium vessels, engage on my mark. He raised his hand. 3. The assembly closed in. 2. The prison ring hummed with rising tension as though sensing the coming storm. 1. Kale's fingers sliced downward. Mark. Space exploded. The Imperium fleet surged forward in a spearhead formation. Frigates darted ahead like wolves. Heavy cruisers unleashed broadside fire. Carriers deployed swarms of drone fighters that spiraled into the enemy formation like a metallic hurricane. The battle was violent and beautiful, flashes of light illuminating the dark void as ships twisted, dodged, and collided in a dance of destruction. Vorn shouted over comms, their left flank is breaking. Hold formation, Kale commanded. We need opening for infiltration teams. Meanwhile, Lyra punched in rapid commands. Strategos, I've identified the conduits. They're linked by gravitational nodes. If we target the stabilizers, the whole system will collapse. Show me. The map shifted, 6 glowing points surrounding the ring. Kale nodded. Perfect. Dispatch strike teams Theta and Ravel. They'll plant charges on the stabilizers. Lyra hesitated. They'll be exposed. The assembly will see them. Kale's voice turned dark. That's why we draw their fire. Minutes felt like hours. Human vessels exploded. Assembly fighters scattered debris across the sector. The void churned with smoke and sparks. But the Imperium held the line. And then, charges planted, came the report. Awaiting detonation orders. Kale's pulse steadied. Do it. The void flashed 6 times, silent, blinding pulses of white light. Cracks of unstable energy webbed across the ancient ring. Then, the entire structure groaned. Lights flickered. Shields collapsed. The gravitational hum died in an instant. The prison went dark. Backup systems activated inside the habitats. Pressure shields stabilized. For the first time in months, the colonists were not under assembly control. Lyra whispered, "We did it." But Kale's expression didn't soften. Because the assembly dreadnought was turning, charging its main cannon. Straight at the darkened prison. Kale's blood ran ice cold. They're going to wipe them out. He slammed his fist down. All ships intercept. Now. His voice thundered across the fleet. No one harms our people again. Not while I breathe. Not while humanity stands. The next moment would decide the fate of 50,000 souls. And the fate of the Empire itself. The assembly dreadnought's main cannon charged, its spine glowing with a violent blue light that stretched across the void like a rising comet. Every ship in the Imperium fleet witnessed it. Every colonist trapped in the darkened ring prison felt the vibration of doom approaching. 50,000 lives. One alien decision. A single heartbeat left. Kale Draven stood frozen for only a fraction of a second, but his mind raced with the force of a collapsing star. Trajectory, he demanded. Lyra's hands flew across the console. Direct hit to the prison habitats. They're trying to erase all evidence. Vorn's voice cracked with disbelief. They're going to kill them all just to hide they took them? Kale's eyes hardened into steel. No. They're going to try. He stepped forward, voice thundering across the fleet-wide channel. All ships, full burn forward. Form a shield wall around the habitats. The Imperium fleet surged into motion, engines flaring white-hot as they formed a wedge-shaped barrier between the dreadnought and the helpless colonists. But the cannon was nearly charged. Kale knew it. Everyone knew it. And then the dreadnought fired. The beam erupted like a star being born, pure energy ripping through space with a banshee howl. The void lit up, turning ships into silhouettes framed by blinding light. The first line of Imperium frigates took the hit. Shields shattered. Hulls ruptured. Ships spun out of control, tearing apart in spirals of flame. But they bought a second. Only a second. A second for the cruisers to raise their reinforced deflection grids. A second for the Valorian to orient its forward shields. A second for the Imperium to stand between death and its people. The beam slammed into the shield wall. Kale braced against the shockwave as the Valorian trembled violently, alarms screaming, consoles sparking. Officers were thrown to the floor. Shields at 42%, someone yelled. 32%, another shouted. The beam kept coming. Kale gripped the railing so hard his knuckles went white. Hold the line, he growled. Hold. The beam buckled. Wavered. Finally. It sputtered out. Silence fell. The Imperium fleet was battered, scorched, and shaking. But the habitats were untouched. The people were alive. Lyra let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Vorn slumped back into his chair, exhausted, trembling. Kale's voice came out low, reverent, and deadly calm. Return fire. The Imperium fleet unleashed everything. Missiles streaked like meteors. Artillery lit the void with molten trails. Drone fighters swarmed in formation, tearing into enemy hulls with precision strikes. The dreadnought tried to charge again, but its systems were overloaded from the first blast. It was too slow. The Imperium was not. Two cruisers, ISV Hammerfall and ISV Dawnblade, executed a perfect pincer maneuver, firing penetrating plasma lances into the dreadnought's exposed flank. A blossom of fire erupted across its hull. Target structural core, Kale ordered. The Valorian's forward cannon hummed, building power. Kale watched the targeting reticle settle on the dreadnought's heart. Fire. The blast pierced through armor, cut through its engines, and split the dreadnought along its central spine. The alien flagship cracked apart with a deafening roar and erupted into a radiant, molten explosion. Cheers erupted across the Imperium fleet. Some officers cried. Others screamed into their helmets with raw relief. But Kale didn't celebrate. Not yet. Strategos, Lyra said softly, the habitats are stable. We can begin extraction. Kale nodded. Deploy all rescue teams. Get everyone out. What about the remaining assembly ships? Vorn asked. Kale looked at the enemy fleet, now in disarray, scattering like frightened birds. Let them run. Vorn blinked. Sir? They came expecting to destroy humanity. Kale's voice dropped into a cold whisper. Now they will go home, and tell their leaders what we've become. He turned toward the prison ring, its structure now flickering with emergency lights and the silhouettes of people pressing against windows in hope. Today we protected our own, he said. That message is louder than fear. Docking bridges extended. Medical teams rushed inside. Marines carried children to safety. Families collapsed into each other's arms, weeping, laughing, shaking in disbelief. Kale entered the habitats himself, walking through rows of exhausted, trembling survivors. Many reached for him, not with fear but with unimaginable gratitude. "Thank you. You came for us. We thought we were dead." Kale didn't speak much. He offered nods, brief words, steady presence. What mattered was that they were alive. A young girl, no older than 7, tugged at his sleeve. "Mister, are you the one who stopped the bad ships?" Kale knelt down, eyes softening. "Not me. All of us. Humanity did this together." She smiled, a small, bright thing in a place once meant for despair. "Are we going home?" Kale's voice tightened with emotion he didn't show anywhere else. "Yeah," he said quietly. "You're going home." Hours later, with all colonists safely aboard Imperium vessels, the remnants of the ancient ring finally began to collapse. Without the stabilizers, without the stolen power from the collapsed stars, the structure groaned like a dying giant. Kale watched from the Valorian as the prison, a monument to cruelty, crumbled into shimmering dust. Lyra stood beside him. "It's over." Kale shook his head. "No. This was only the beginning." She looked at him, reading the determination behind his eyes. "You think they'll strike again?" "I know they will," Kale said. "The Assembly wanted to erase us. Now they'll fear us." Vorn approached from behind. "So what now, strategos?" Kale turned to the stars, endless, dark, filled with threats and possibilities. "Now," he said, "the Imperium of Soul takes its place in the galaxy. Not as an outcast, not as prey." His voice resonated like iron. "But as a power no one will ever dare to deny again." The fleet formed around him, thousands of survivors, soldiers, ships, and citizens looking to the future. The Empire's first dawn. Bright, fearless, unbroken. Humanity had been denied a seat, so they built a throne.